Everybody. Can you, I hope everyone can hear me okay now. Chris and others, can you hear me okay? Just want to check on the microphone. Okay.
I can certainly hear you.
Okay, thanks very much. Just want to get our technicalities straightened away here. Thanks, folks. Nice to see a great turnout for this webinar. New friends and old friends and folks I look forward to getting to know better at the end of this webinar. What we're going to do is talk generally at the start about blogging and carry on, get into the weeds a bit more as we go through and into some structures that I hope will help you, including a new structure that I've worked on with a colleague of mine that is designed to balance subjectivity and objectivity, but we'll get into that in a bit more. The key is, first off, from my perspective anyway, the key about blogs is that they help you be proactive in advocating about agriculture, which is where the agvocacy word comes from, advocating about agriculture. And to me, the whole key here is to be proactive. It's for agriculture to be proactive, get out in front of arguments, get out in front of confusion, get out in front of an issue, so when agriculture comes to the fore, people have an understanding of the issue from agriculture's perspective first, before they have to catch up, before agriculture has to catch up with someone else. Much better, in general, to be out in front than it is to be behind and trying to explain things after they happen, rather than being out in front and being able to explain things before they happen. Social media really gives an opportunity to do that, and that's where weblogs come in. Weblogs are a form of social media. Again, we'll talk about this later and in more detail, but the whole key here is, and I believe this is why we're engaged in this process today, is to advocate, get out in front of the issue. And that's what we're going to try to do with our blogs. So, as Chris had mentioned, a blog is it's a great tool to assist with conversations, with education, and with knowledge translation and transfer. You've got all this space available to you, although again, you don't want to take too much advantage of that. You want to use it wisely, which is why we're going to introduce this template later on today. But to get the whole conversation going about agriculture, a blog is a good way to do that. It's got a mechanism in which people can respond to you and kind of keep the conversation going. When it comes to education, it's an opportunity to educate people about a certain issue or technique or something in agriculture that they should know about, can now know about, thanks to your contributions. And as far as knowledge translation and transfer goes, it has a great role in that, in helping knowledge get from a source, which may be a farmer, which may be a university, which may be a government, into the hands of other farmers who could use it, or the media. Certainly some of the uses. So here is my blog. I've been blogging for a long time now, 7, 8, 9 years, I guess. I try to blog regularly. Doesn't always work, but I do my best to get something up there once a week or get several topics up there at once. My blog is basically a WordPress blog. And that's what I'm going to be using for the platforms that I talk about today, is the software called WordPress. To me, it's very accessible. I think if I can use it, a whole lot of other people can too. It's not complicated, and it's got less complicated through the years. When this particular template that you see now was put together, I got to RKD Studios in Guelph to help me customize it a bit, because I had some applications that were maybe a bit more advanced than blog templates were at the time, standard blog templates. But I think now, this was about 4 years ago, I guess, that I had this template put together. I think I could probably do this myself now, just based on a WordPress template. But I use this on the far right. You can see EDRD 3050. That's the course I teach at Guelph, Agricultural Communications. So I use this to house my course syllabus, so it's accessible to everyone. A few notes there about my blog and what I use it for. About me, I do some travel writing now on a freelance basis for the Toronto Star. When they have some type of a agriculture or food travel opportunity, they call me. I'm very lucky. I get to go. I take holidays. Off I go. And I'll talk about that a bit as well, as far as gathering photos from that for your blog. And then the home page. The home page are the blog entries. And most of my blog entries are, I blog a version of the columns that I write for destinations or publications, such as the Guelph Mercury, Real Agriculture, The Grower, and a few others that I write for. I do some work with FCC for the Express, for Agri-Success Journal. And this is a really good place to park all of those after they've been published in their original form somewhere. What I do is I take them now, take my columns, and condense them into something that's in this 3-paragraph format that I'm going to be talking about today. So it doesn't look exactly like something people have seen before. It's a little bit different, but it still has elements such as headline, photo, things that are journalistic and I find interesting to write about. So that is my blog. I use Urban Cowboy, a city view on agri-food. I'm not a farmer, but I certainly have a passion for writing about agriculture. And the city view on agri-food is probably due to be changed. I think it's like a blog template like this is kind of like a front page of a newspaper, or the newspaper itself. It undergoes design periodically, undergoes a little bit of change. It's probably time for me to change mine a bit. And I probably will, because I enjoy blogging and I think it's great. I also involve one of my students, one of my former students in blogging. She helps me put these together sometimes. And I've got a lot of respect for her writing abilities. And so we work together on this. I've got quite a volume of material that I'm moving through, so we work on this together. So this is my blog. And this is, you've seen all these keep calm things. I found this one, keep calm and enjoy blogging. I really think it is enjoyable because it opens up a new door. It allows you to be the publisher. Now you can publish your own blank, your own kind of newspaper as a blog. And that's a new development. Being able to be your own publisher has moved journalism into what is popularly called citizen journalism, in which you are the journalist as a citizen, not particularly as an experienced, trained, academically backed up journalist, but you are a citizen journalist. What a great opportunity blogging gives you to do that. And I think people find bloggers interesting. If you think about the analogy, I put this slide up because if you thought about somebody saying, so I'm writing a book, well, in a conversation, it would be definitely a tell me more situation. Oh, you're writing a book? What about? Tell me more. So I'm writing a blog. Oh, what are you writing a blog about? Tell me more about it. I think that's a conversation starter to begin with. So I think there's an interest out there. There's millions and millions of blogs. The key is, how do you distinguish yours? But if there wasn't some uptake for them, I don't think they'd be so popular. I think it does give people an opportunity to express themselves as they might not be able to otherwise. But I also think there's uptake for these because it gives readers an opportunity to have such a diversity of opinion that they can, in fact, that they can tap into through blogs that are free, of course. So as we get started today, we'll talk about why blog and what's citizen journalism, which we've already touched on a bit, and why be objective. Well, to me, blogging is a proactive approach, as we've talked about before, but it's also very colorful. That's a nice thing about a blog. A blog is very colorful. You can put photos on, which again we'll talk about in a second. You can get photos on there, you can get video on, you can do all kinds of things that are colorful and exciting, like a newspaper, except for those videos, of course, but it's an exciting way, I think, to get news out there, to get information out there, to start conversations. And as citizens, it's a form of citizen journalism, which we've discussed briefly. And here is a key about why be objective. I'm going to talk today about, and we can have a discussion about this perhaps in chat, about being objective in your blog or bringing objective information forward. I think that's essential for agriculture. Of course, as an advocate, you feel strongly and you want to get your position out there, particularly if your back is up against the wall. Agriculture's back might be up against the wall at times with consumers, public, whoever it might be. And you're passionate and you want to rush forward and get your opinion out there. I would argue today that the format that we're going to discuss will let you do that, but it will also do it in a measured way, in an objective way, or in a way that combines subjectivity and objectivity. Again, we'll get to that in a minute. So here we are. So, blog is part of a media strategy that you might be engaged in some of these activities that you see up here, or some of these mediums. But to me, agriculture needs to be everywhere. Agriculture certainly is in. I'm talking about not farm papers here, because we're very well served by agriculture is very well served, I believe, by farm newspapers. Getting better served by the internet. Maybe not so much by television, but radio's had its day. Certainly farm magazines. There's still some farm radio, more so in the United States. But blogs are part of the internet, part of this whole media approach to getting, to advocating about agriculture. I think it's also important here to talk about again the proactive aspect of not waiting for the media to come to you, but for you to actually be the media, and you can do that with a blog. As Chris talked about, my background, and certainly part of what I do now, is based on news. So I really like to take a news approach to blogging. I believe that's a way to draw people in more. I believe if you have some news is always exciting. There's something new happening in it, and it not only gives you a reason to write a blog post, but it gives the reader a reason to read it, because there's been some news happening here that you want to bring forward, and you've got a perspective on it through your blog, and you've got a regular perspective on it. I should have probably mentioned this earlier. A blog is, by definition, a web log. That's where the term blog came in. I don't know who invented it, but they took web log, put it together, and we had blog. So a web log, by definition, suggests that this will be an ongoing approach that you're going to be taking. It's a log of your opinions, of your perspectives, and there we have a blog. So that's what I try to do, is take a news approach to blogging. Now, news brings us to the question about what is news. And Ed Casavoy, I put this to Ed Casavoy one time because I wanted to bring it to my class. I'm teaching news writing in class, in my agricultural communications class, and certainly in my Spark program here, where the students at the university are writing about research. We think we're writing news. And so I said to Ed, who was the Guelph Mercury editor at the time, I said, how do you define news? It's a pretty broad area. So how do you define news when you're filling the pages of your paper? He said, well, that's easy. He says, news is anything people find interesting. And that may have been an easy thing for him to say, but it's a harder thing to hone in on in some ways, because trying to determine what people find interesting will, I guess, come forward when you check your stats. You see how many people are following you. I guess that'll determine if you've determined if what you say is news is what people find interesting. But in agriculture, there are so many things that are interesting. When you look around, they may be somewhat ordinary to those of us in agriculture or those of us who watch agriculture closely. They may be ordinary to you if you're on the farm. But to a whole lot of people, they're not ordinary, and a whole lot of people are getting more interested in agriculture all the time, as for whatever reason it gets into the pages of magazines and newspapers, popular press. They want to know what's going on. They think that's interesting. They now think production agriculture is interesting. And talk about a sea change, that wasn't always the case. It was hard to get people interested in production agriculture, non-farmers, for a long time. Getting them interested in reading or listening or watching anything about production agriculture was tough. Not so tough these days because people have figured out a way to equate it to food. Sounds elementary, but that equation between agriculture and food is now popular, and people are finding that interesting. So when I go various places, you think about what's interesting. Well, photos are very interesting. They tell all kinds of stories. This is an organic hay producer near Alvinston, Ontario. His name is Tom Parkins. He's been producing organic hay for 15, 18 years before it was fashionable to do so. And he's got his whole shtick down now about he didn't do it because he's philosophically interested one way or the other. He did it because it's profitable. And we know farming has to be profitable. And that's a good message to get across to people who are just learning about farming now, and who may not think that that's something that farmers are even have in their minds. So I interviewed Tom, and what a great picture. There he is with his hay in a piece of machinery, and he's thumbs up, and way to go, Tom. Way to produce that organic hay. And this was a tough year for hay producers, but that made it newsworthy. How did hay producers get along in a terrible, terrible year like this for hay production, at least in his particular area where it was wet all the time? So that makes for a good blog post when you've got a good picture like that. This was a picture I took in St. Kitts about a month ago. This fellow's name is Yasun Tafari, and he's the manager at a farm in St. Kitts that is trying to bring tourists in. Maybe you've seen this story somewhere. Trying to bring tourists in to do their own harvesting of their dinner. Now, you're not going to get a full meal out of what he has there, but you'll get a salad out of it. And he has about 2 or 3 acres set aside there in his farm where people can go and harvest their own dinner. And that's a way of drawing people to tourist destinations now, instead of the classic sun and sea and beach approach. Here are some pierogies in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh fancies itself a pierogi capital. Now, I know there's a couple of folks online who are very good photographers and food photographers. what a great way to get people into your story, into your blog post, with a good picture like a half-eaten plate of pierogies. Beer being a good agricultural commodity, a good food, seems to draw people. I get lots of uptake when I post a beer photo or a beer story or a beer tweet, as the fellow in Buffalo. And people seem, when you're talking about, hey, I've got a blog, can I take your picture for it? Many people are very happy to do so. And I snapped about 6 photos of him and managed to get a good one here. But you can see being able to have this to back up his story, very important. I was fortunate to get to go to Abu Dhabi. What do they have there for a dairy? A camel dairy. That to me was very interesting. And when they said, would you like to go to this camel dairy? I said, yeah, for sure. There's a photo of the farm manager at the camel dairy. So all this stuff is very interesting right now. We're in this time when agriculture is interesting to a broader range of people all the time. So I think we've got this opportunity. We take some good photos, write some good blog posts to advocate about why agriculture needs some room to be able to grow crops and raise animals and do the things that farmers need to do. Solutions to problems are interesting. I find that particularly when writing about research, because research is often an answer to a question. It's often a solution to a problem. I really like this quote from Dave McClure. He says, people don't care about your solutions, they care about their problems. I think in agriculture, agriculture has come forward with solutions many times to what it thought were problems that people are experiencing. What are they, though? Are they what people find to be a problem right now? Same thing that people have lined up with their solutions. Well, what are Canadians' problems and what are agriculture's solutions to them? I think agriculture offers some really interesting solutions, coming back to that whole newsworthy thing about what is newsworthy. Interesting things are newsworthy. What are those interesting solutions? Well, the whole drive towards affordable food, sometimes it's newsworthy, sometimes it's not. Abundant food. We seem to have an abundance of food, but then we have a drought or a flood or something, or too much rain, and then maybe we won't. Safe food. I think food is overwhelmingly safe, but there's the odd occasion when through preparation, maybe through production, it isn't. And there's an opportunity to talk about it, but there's lots of opportunities to talk about how safe it is as well. The effective use of food, with food waste being just coming to the fore lately, within the last couple of years. Some good stats now, some good evidence-based information about how much food waste we have, and what a great topic that is. And the whole idea about clearing up confusion for people. Again, a great opportunity for bloggers, for agricultural bloggers, to clear up confusion, to address issues. And to me, there's some good upbeat stories. This isn't all about drudgery, or again, when you take a proactive position, you can decide or help decide what the news will be, or what the reaction to the news will be, or steer it in a direction that is upbeat rather than, again, being behind, trying to catch up. Bringing forward stories that could have some uptake. What are some good stories here? Well, you've got good stories about local food, and who doesn't want to read about that right now? Everybody does. But not just local food that somebody else produces, local food that you produce as a farmer, or that you're close to, that you might encounter, healthy food you eat, that you've got from a market, be it farmer's market or grocery store or wherever it might be, end of the lane. Great stories about that. Everyone's concerned about environmental stability, sustainability, and we know that there are these great stories about environmental farm plans that have been around for a long time that I don't think the public knows very much about. That gives a good opportunity to talk about environment and farming in a upbeat way. Farmers' role in the economy, I don't think that's well understood. There are some good stats available. Stats don't make a story, but they certainly support a story. Can you get passionate about statistics? Some people can, but it's how statistics support the story that you're passionate about that will have more of an uptake, I believe. This is one that I really like about how rural Canada supports urban transportation, recreation, and leisure. When urban people might be reading your blog and you have something on there that shows how the road in front of your house connects them with the beach, with the provincial park, with a stream that goes through somewhere where they go trout fishing. I think they get that because that really strikes home to them. So good stories. So here's how I'm suggesting we approach blogging. Talk about getting into the weeds. So the number here that I'd like us to focus on for the next little while is the number 3. This is a 3-paragraph model for blogging. My colleague Jim Evans, who is a professor emeritus at the University of Illinois, and I developed this, and it's going to be in a journal called the Journal of Applied Communications. If you get an opportunity, if you have an interest in agricultural communications, the Journal of Applied Communications is something I think you would find interesting. It has published papers from many of the leading agricultural journalism and communications specialists at universities in the United States where they have full-blown agricultural communications and journalism programs. Very active researchers, and so the Journal of Applied Communications I'd encourage you to check out. But Jim and I are going to have an article in there about this 3-paragraph model, and here's a look at it. And here's the key structure that I would like you to take away. So this is the what, so what, and now what approach. And this is based on a conversation that I had with the former Agriculture and Agri-Food Minister, Lyle Van Cleef. Lyle said when delegations came to his office as the minister, this is what he would ask his staff to brief them on in advance, because he would want to be briefed on this same approach. What, so what, and now what? So take any issue and try to structure it around these 3 questions. To some of you, this may be old hat. To some of you, it may be new. I like the way that Lyle succinctly put this together in what would be no more than sometimes a 5-minute, or at the outset, a 20-minute presentation to the minister. When a group arrives and it has a certain issue they want to talk about to the minister, he would say, okay, so what is your issue? So what can I do to help you? What's the new development in the issue that is making you come to me? And then the now what is, what do we do about it? What do we do about it together? And that's the way he would structure. He would ask for these presentations to him to be structured, rather than the kind of classic way where you'd show up with the delegation would show up and everybody would have a hat for the minister and they'd give it to him and put it on, take a photo, and by that time your 20-minute delegation to the minister is down to about 10, and then once you shake hands and everybody says hi, we're down to 5, and then it's disappeared. So he wanted this structure particularly. Now, and to me, this really worked for blogging. So this is what we're suggesting to come forward with. So in the first paragraph of your 3-paragraph blog, what is the answer the what, address the what. The second paragraph, address the so what. The third paragraph addressed the now what. Let's see how this actually translates into the issue. The new development in the issue, which is where your news sense comes in. And then the third paragraph, the now what, is your opinion of this new development and the call to action. So as you can see in this structure, I believe it's a combination of objective material and subjective material. This is how it all comes together. So there's the issue, the what in paragraph 1. Here's paragraph 2, the new development in the issue, the so what, and the third, your opinion of this new development, the now what, paragraph 3. And this approach combines objectivity and subjectivity. So the objectivity in the first 2 paragraphs. And this to me is key. It respects the reader. It doesn't assume that they know everything about the subject. So it gets the subject right up front. When you talk about the issue, it's right up front. You're presenting it objectively, as difficult as that may be for a passionate person such as yourself, who is an advocate for agriculture. It is not working for readers if they don't have the same understanding of the issue as you do. Granted, you have 90 words-ish, or maybe 100, to present that issue. But you can go deeper later on. You can go deeper in subsequent blog posts. That's the nice thing about your blog. You can post until your fingers are tired if you want. Separately, approach this blog post as a 3-paragraph post. Next one, 3-paragraph post. You can keep writing, but get that subject right up front. And that second paragraph shows that you have a news sense. It shows you understand that blogs should have some type of sense of immediacy and excitement. And I think that'll keep people reading. And when you position your argument, as Lyle Van Cleef had said, in this logical manner, what's the issue, what's the new development, what do you want me to do about it? It lets readers follow you through with that in that particular order. So when you advocate for something, at the end, you've got a strong position that you've already set up the reader for the expectation that, I understand the issue, here's the new development, and here's why I want you to join me, here's why I want you to, here's what I want you to do, because you now understand the issue and you understand what the new development is. Now, a key to this writing aspect of the blog is transition. And transition is really vital to get you from one paragraph to another. And sometimes in transition can be a whole nother seminar in itself, webinar in itself. But the key is to glue those paragraphs together. So you've got the issue, and then you say, now here's the new development in the issue. That might actually be the start of your second paragraph. Here's the new development in this issue. Third paragraph, here's how I feel about this. Here's why I want you to do the following. And that's transition. And that's, putting it very simply, but that's what it is. It's that glue that gets you from one thought as a writer to another, gets you from one paragraph to another, and it's the reader from one paragraph to the other. That's transition. So you do a checklist about your blog. So you say, okay, do I have the structure figured out? I'm going to go back to the 3-paragraph structure. The reason I'm doing this particular checklist is this is what I use with my students. I'd suggest maybe if you give it a try, this particular format, when you do a checklist, are the following things working? Do I have my structure down? Do I have these 3 paragraphs? Have I identified the issue, the new development, and am I stating my opinion clearly and my call to action? In my new development, is there some newsworthiness in there? Can I link? And linking is it's a great way to have others tell stories, because all you have to do is put the link in and off it goes. You don't have to go into a great deal of depth to tell a lot of detail about the new development, because the link can lead a reader to a new area, so you don't have to go into a great deal of detail. But you do, in my opinion, for this particular style we're talking about, if you have some newsworthiness in that second paragraph, it'll keep people reading. They've got the issue, okay, now here's a new development. Here's something interesting within this issue. If you don't find the issue interesting, hopefully you'll find this new development interesting. And is there some originality to your blog? I mean, why are you blogging? You're passionate about something. Can you take some perspective that's going to be unique? You know, when I did this whole urban cowboy thing, it started 25 years ago when I started to write for the Guelph Mercury. It was unique then to be writing about agriculture from an urban perspective. So that was the original thing. Maybe it's not original anymore, but that's who I am now. I'm urban cowboy blogger, urban cowboy writer. My Twitter handle is @urbancowboy. @the urban cowboy, sorry. So that's as original as I'm going to get. But what is your original blog post? Is there some original perspective that you have on things? Here's a big one. Credibility is lost if spelling is wrong. Credibility is lost if grammar is wrong. The fun thing about journalism is you can start a sentence with and or but. You can take all kinds of liberties, but you can't take liberties with spelling, and you can't take too many liberties with grammar. So there's a checklist anyway. Here's an example of this 3-paragraph blog. This is an example from my class last semester. All my students blogged. They had to do 7 entries, I guess, 7 or 8 entries throughout the course of the semester. And I asked them to blog with about 90 words or less in a paragraph. And I wanted them to use the issue, the new development, and the opinion at the end. So I just downloaded this. I didn't put in the whole screenshot of their blog because I wanted you to see what it looks like. So it's not very long, as you can see, 250 words. 250 words is also becoming, I wouldn't say standard, but it's not unusual to be asked to write a story as a journalist that's about 250 words these days. And so I thought this was a realistic length for them to do, especially when they had 8 to do throughout the course of the semester, along with their other assignments. This particular student is a vegetable farmer in the up near in the muck soils of Ontario, in the Bradford area, and he's passionate about explaining to people what the ins and outs of vegetables. Big topic. And so this was his example. Not all garlic is created equal. He blogged about it. He talks generally about garlic up front, and then here's the new development. Elephant garlic has recently started showing up in grocery stores and markets. In the second paragraph, that's his transition, and then into what he wants you to do at the end. He's putting some perspective on it. He's not screaming at people. He's saying it's not necessarily a bad thing, but if you're looking for true distinctive garlic, double check what you're getting. I thought this was a very measured approach, and I was proud of the approach he took here. So that's an example of what this 3-paragraph style can look like. He had a picture in, I believe, of garlic. People will be familiar with it. What else could you do with this? You could also certainly put in a picture of elephant garlic. You could put in a picture of a leek. You could put in a picture of someone harvesting. You could, if you were, what I would have encouraged him to do is to put in more pictures of his own farm and of garlic being harvested there, if indeed they did grow it. And you'd put in some conventional garlic as well. So there's one example. This student was passionate about bees. He's a beekeeper. Certainly topical right now. This whole zombie apocalypse, he had some fun with that. He had a picture of some bees in. Talks about zombies up front. Excuse me. And how it works. Then you see, in comes the new development earlier this month. And that's fine. It doesn't have to be earlier yesterday or whatever. Earlier this month. That's fine. And then what he believes. So he's got the issue up front. He's got earlier this month in the second paragraph, the new development. Then in the third paragraph, the call to action, or what he wants you to believe. Hinder the spread of disease. Beekeeper has to do thus and so. So that's his approach. So that's what another 3-paragraph blog entry looks like. Here are some accessible blog examples. And I chose these. These were actually some of the, these were pointed out to me. Thanks Farm Management Canada for pointing these out. I had a look at the list that they had, that the folks there like. I picked these ones, and I'll leave them posted up here, and I think you'll be able to see it later. I like these because these are very accessible and easy to create WordPress blogs. These use templates you go to, and you can create your own blog in a very short period of time. I would say in 20 minutes, tops, you could have a blog put together. Maybe some of you are doing it now on WordPress. As you can see, some of them still use WordPress, the WordPress URL. You can change that to have it as your own URL. And they're having some fun with it. You can see what how they're approaching things. Utter news, so you know what that's going to be about. City girl chasing cattle, kind of know what that's going to be about. No farms, no food. Nice play on words there. Hashtag farm life, taking advantage again of the popularity in social media with the hashtag. And I'm not French, but I looked at this one and I like the looks of it. You have to make your own judgment about the content of it, but I like the content and I like the way these folks were approaching blogging. So there's some examples for you as well. Here's something to keep in mind. When you are engaging the public, I believe you need some fortitude and trustworthiness. I believe the trustworthiness will come through, excuse me, I think the trustworthiness will come through in the way you create your blog posts, when you show people that they can trust you because you've presented the issue objectively, you presented the new development as objectively as you can. Then they will trust that your attitude or your call to action is based on some learned perspective and you've thought things through. I mentioned fortitude because I don't want to sugarcoat this. You could very well get some pretty harsh comments in your comments section. And it's kind of a blow when you first see these, when you're trying to fight the good fight and be an advocate or be an advocate. And it's you're out there trying to tell people about agriculture and you get hammered. It requires some fortitude to carry on. It's character building, and I would encourage you to not give up if indeed you do have some negative perspectives. And of course, why wouldn't you? Because it's a big wide world out there. We don't always agree. But if we can have some conversations, at least we can perhaps understand each other's perspectives better. As citizen journalists, I believe that you are part of this. You're part of the part of the club, part of the journalism club that thrives on relationships. You need readers. They need you. The world needs journalists to put things in perspective, which is another nice thing that a blog does. I would again suggest that this particular style of a blog puts things in perspective. So the world needs journalists, and you need readers. You need readers to come back to your blog. You also need sources, and you have to develop relationships with those sources. So you want to be respectful, and you want to be trustworthy. How do you build these relationships? Well, I think conversations build relationships. And conversations not always when you're trying to get a story from someone, but when you're working on just developing a relationship. So when you need someone or they need you, you've got that relationship. You've had the conversation with somebody. You know them and they know you. So when you need information, they're more likely to give it. Same with your readers. If you are having a conversation with your readers, if you actually respond to people who post something on your blog or tweet or whatever, you're developing a relationship with them. And relationships in journalism and citizen journalism, which you are now as a blogger, you're a citizen journalist, are essential. And that concludes the presentation part of the seminar. I see there are some questions. There's a question that's been put up here. Question. Oh, sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Well, first off, thanks so very much. Just good material. I'm not being a huge, trying to break more into blogging myself. These are some good tips. I like the structural pieces. And also, I gotta say, it's not the first time I've seen a camel and Ringo Starr in the same PowerPoint, which I found strange. Before I get to, there's a couple questions here. I kind of want to be totally selfish and sneak my own in. In another life here in Ottawa, outside of Farm Management Canada, I run a little farmers market, and blogs play a huge role in sort of speaking to the city folk, if you will, about and making that tie. And I know a lot of my farmer bloggers find it very challenging to sort of use layman terms might be a little too strong, but do you have any tips for ag writers who, let's, for sake of argument, say they are coming from a strong ag background? Do you have any tips as to the language you might use in speaking to the general public?
Yeah, and that's certainly a challenge. I appreciate it. I know that I find the same thing in science when we're writing at the University of Guelph, when we're writing about science, about research. There are terms that scientists use that just slip off their tongue like they're common language. And I'm not even sure they understand when they're speaking in jargon. And I don't say that in a negative way, because they have to speak that way for science to advance. And I believe farmers have to speak to other farmers in the same manner in order for farming to advance. So I think the best way is probably to run a blog post by someone who's a non-farmer to say, are there any terms in here that you're uncomfortable with or you don't understand? And that's easy in my case because I'm not a scientist, and so when one of the students or myself writes a research story and there's a science term in there, what we do is we'll put the term in, because I think it's important that people do understand, readers do understand, that there is some language that they may not have heard of before, or a word or a term that they're unfamiliar with that needs to be used. I don't think we have to gloss it over, but I think right after has to come a one-sentence explanation about what that jargon means or what that term means. Now, maybe that's an entire blog post. I don't know. But if it's one word that's just one word that's kind of itchy to people, then having that explanation right after, just a double hyphen that comes right after, like glyphosate glyphosate, if you had to use glyphosate and then put right after what it is, in a nutshell, not easy to do, but ever-bearing strawberries. I'm just thinking about things I've heard about recently. You know, what's an ever-bearing plant? That type of thing. Quick explanation right after.
Thanks very much. I'll move over to the typed-in questions here. The first one is from Lindsay, and she says, we primarily blog through guest blog posts for other organizations. Do you have any suggestions for creating strong one-offs that don't come across too much like marketing?
Okay. I go back to news. News, to me, seldom looks like marketing. If you can base a blog post, if you have a guest blogger coming in talking about something that is newsworthy, I don't think it comes off like looking like marketing. I think it comes off looking like an interpretation of the news from that particular organization's perspective. So again, in that second paragraph, you know the issue you want to talk about, Lindsay. In that second paragraph, can you put a news spin in there? I think besides not looking like marketing, it'll also generate more interest, I think, in the blog post.
So, Margarita, she asked, does the blog have to have a comments section?
Well, I think there's two ways to ask that question. Does the blog have to have a comment section, or should the blog have a comment section? The blog, I believe, should have a comment section if your goal is to engage in a conversation with your readers. Otherwise, how else will that happen? And I think if we're going to be advocating for agriculture, the best way is to have the conversation. So therefore, I'd suggest having a comment section, because what you write, I suspect, in 250 to 300 words may not be the final word on the topic. You may need to continue to engage to clarify points, and so I would suggest that you have one. I'm not an expert in building blogs, but I'm pretty sure you don't have to have a comments section. I think there are blog templates through WordPress that don't. I should tell you, there are hundreds and hundreds of blog templates through WordPress in which you can adopt for free. I should have mentioned that as well. So you can, or you don't have to have a comment section. I would suggest you do. It's my perspective.
It's funny, Julianne reiterates a thought I had while you were speaking. And what is the etiquette or rule on reblogging?
Well, the rule on anything is to get the approval of the author, because the fact that it's out there is so it's been published. So you have a copyright on it because you've published it. So if someone says here's a blog, I think it's certainly a courtesy to say to let the blogger know that you're going to be using their piece. But you don't know if somebody's paid that blogger, or you don't know a whole lot of things about the ins and outs of it, that maybe there's some new developments in it. It's just a good idea to certainly the etiquette, can't say there's a written rule, but certainly the etiquette is to ask, but the rule is anything is to seek permission.
Has blogging, I'm just going to kind of go on that thought from Julianne. Has blogging created I've heard it referred to as guerrilla media before. Has it created hell for all you journalist types? How do you kind of measure it with what's going on in the mainstream media?
Well, the whole idea about guerrilla, what did you call it, Chris? Guerrilla something or other?
Well, I can't say it's my original thought, but guerrilla media.
Yeah, guerrilla media. So this kind of harkens back to our friend, late George Harrison, who said he was a guerrilla songwriter. He said that he didn't write from a classical perspective. He wrote from kind of from his heart and from his head. Um, is guerrilla journalism blogging? Maybe. It doesn't. I don't think it's really driven journalists crazy. It's maybe driven some. It's driven some organizations crazy from people who are, and some news sources from people who are maybe using it in a less than upstanding way. But that's a very broad statement too, because in a democracy, everybody's got their everybody should have the right to say what they want to say, right? As long as you're not slandering or libeling somebody. So are they entitled to their perspective? Yeah, sure. I mean, in some ways, some journalists think bloggers have done them a favor, because if you're a good journalist, you certainly stand out against a poor blogger.
Fair enough. Pamela asks, you mentioned that blogs should be ongoing. Do you think it would be all right to feature a temporary blog of, let's say, a couple of months?
Depends on what's driving your blog. If there's news driving your blog, I would say you would probably want to blog a little bit more often than every couple of months. But if you're blogging about some seasonal aspect on your farm or in your organization, once every couple of months might be okay. I think you would get more readers if you publish on a regular basis. And it depends on what regular is, right? A lot of people would say don't blog unless you have news, and I would agree to that to a significant. I would agree to that, because in that second paragraph that I'm advocating, there should be some news value in that second paragraph.
I'm not familiar with this case, but Sherry is asking, what's your take on the court ruling that came down against the blogger in Montana? Are you familiar?
No, my apologies. I'm not familiar with that case.
Sorry, Sherry. Over to Jay. He says, thanks very much, Owen. Clear and concise. Thank you, Jay. Margarita, she talks about communication, safety, and well-being of migrant farm workers, and many times the comments, even personal. How do you handle this? So I guess what she's asking is, are people stabbing back at you? How do you did mention fortitude. Maybe you want to help Margarita out.
Yeah, Margarita probably has some good lessons for us as well if she's had to handle some of these. Where do you draw the line? I mean, you're under no obligation to respond to every comment. Certainly not those that are really nasty. And you can on my blog anyway, I can delete comments, and I think that's fair game. If people are calling you down, you don't have to put up with it. You can delete it. There's a nice thing about a blog as well.
Yeah, God loves.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've done it. If people are wondering if I've done it, I definitely have. If I got called down, absolutely.
Well, it's the beauty of social media. You can kind of control your own destiny a little bit, anyway. Réjean is another similar thought to me. Do you have any examples of blogs that become liable for their content in the ag area?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay. Marianne asks, what would you recommend to a person who wants to get some training in journalism writing but doesn't want to get a degree in journalism?
You know, that's a tough question in Canada, because we don't have a agricultural journalism or communications program. So, you know, I teach what I think is the only agricultural journalism class at a university in Canada. There's been a few other small ones, but I guess, is there an opportunity to improve that? Yeah, there is. When we talk about the things we need across Canada, I was speaking to a journalist earlier today from Western Canada, talking about the things that are needed to really coalesce the agricultural community. And this journalist was talking about some type of a national campaign. I would say that some type of a national education opportunity, be it online, would also be pretty important.
And a good follow-up from Nick. He's asking, is microblogging, example Twitter and Instagram, are they just as good as having your own blog?
I think Twitter and Instagram are important social media tools. I think they can be used to drive readers to your blog. So I would suggest having a blog along with Instagram and Twitter. Certainly Instagram is great for photos. Certainly Twitter is good for short messages. If you want to have in a kind of concise blog post several photos that are backed up with some good editorial content, I think a blog is still a good way to do that. I'm not sure you can tell the whole story that you want to tell on Twitter in such a brief period, such a brief number of characters. But if you can put a link in there to your blog post, I think it's an effective way to communicate.
And finally, Savannah, beautiful name. Do you have any suggestions? This is kind of a marketing question, I guess. Do you have any suggestions as how to increase the distribution or viewership of a blog, for example, to get past or just outside of your personal network?
One approach I use is Twitter, and I think Twitter is, as Nick had asked, is it as good as having your own blog? Well, I think it's part of it. So I'd suggest to Savannah that she gets very active. Maybe she already is. Gets very active on Twitter to get people to come to her blog. I'd also suggest viewership of a blog will be increased if you have good photos and you have timely, newsworthy material, which kind of comes back to the whole three-paragraph foundation that I'm talking about. That viewership of a blog, I think, to some extent will be driven by the quality of the blog, not just the way it looks, which is important, which is where photos come in and where the blog template comes in, but also the content of that blog.
We just had Suzanne. I think you can all see the questions, but Suzanne is giving a little tip to the person looking for journalism training. Could join Eastern Canadian Farm Writers and attend some of the workshops. So there are, as Owen is a testament to, there are lots of groups, as he is, I believe, the vice president. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm the vice president of the international organization, but I can't speak highly enough about the Canadian Farm Writers Federation, which is made up of 6 associations across Canada. And Suzanne is absolutely right. The farm writers go to great lengths to engage in professional development. And they do put on seminars, better writing seminars, better photography seminars, some marketing seminars, but not as much because there are other organizations that look after that. But it's a group of professionals who have made a commitment to agricultural communications and journalism, and there are folks on both sides of well, I shouldn't say sides, all aspects of agricultural communications and journalism. People who are reporting news and people who are providing news.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. Owen, did you want to sort of wrap it all up, give a little summary, and then I'll just say a few final words and maybe take over the camera, but the spotlight is yours for sure. Yeah,
sure. And I want to say thanks to everybody who hung in there until now, and I hope this new style that I'm advocating is enlightening to you. I think it could be a challenge if you like to write. It could be a challenge to you to try to put A, a blog together, and B, to put blog posts together in this style. And I hope you find it helpful when you do so, and I'd be glad to communicate with you. And please be in contact with me at my email address as well. I'm going to think further about additional opportunities, additional writing opportunities. I know there's a few around that are kind of percolating right now, haven't quite come to fruition yet, but please, let's stay in touch. So, and thanks to Chris, and thanks to all the team at Farm Management Council for offering this. The guidelines were wide open, and I appreciate the broad approach that you gave me to put together this type of a webinar.